Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I'm very excited to be joined by my colleagues at the Chancellor's Office and our colleagues at Chaffey College. My name is Mallory Newell. I am the Director of Institutional Research and Planning at Chaffey College and the Director of the Multiple Measures Assessment Project with the RP Group. And we are bringing you in partnership with the Chancellor's Office a spring webinar series. And we're highlighting colleges that have innovative course curriculum as well as calculus with support. Today we have Chaffey College that's going to be talking about both types of courses. Our presenters here from Chaffey College, I did want to introduce our colleagues from the Chancellor's Office. We're joined by Terrence Willett and by Chantee Smith from the Chancellor's Office, and they're here to help answer any questions that may come up that need to be answered by the Chancellor's Office. So thanks for joining us. So from Chaffey College, we have quite a few presenters, and we also are joined by students. So without further ado, I will turn it over to our colleagues from Chaffey College.
Thanks, Mallory. I'm Mike Wangler, and I am the Dean of Math and Science here at Chaffey. And I'm going to talk just for a minute about kind of how we've structured our calculus pathway. Yeah, this is somewhat in, for compliance purposes for AB 1705, but it's also it's more than that. It's something that the faculty really believe in and want to do, and we're having great success with this. In a nutshell, we basically have two courses in, the calculus pathway goes on beyond Calc 1, but we have two courses with support components. So the way we built this is that we built what we call, it's our innovative prep for calculus course, which is really it's our pre-calculus course that was redesigned to be more of an active learning course, along with a 2-unit co-requisite. So at Chaffey, that is the model that we're using for all of our co-requisites. All of our core courses, the main course is 4 units, and then we have 2-unit, 4-credit co-requisites. They're hard linked together, so they're taught back to back by the same instructor. So really, when students are in the classroom, it's just one seamless block of time, roughly 6 hours a week for these 6-unit classes. And so even though students sign up for 2 separate classes initially, and they have to, they are linked within colleagues, so they can't sign up for one without the other. But once they get in the classroom, it's really treated as one class with just-in-time remediation, so that the main topic is always being discussed, always being covered, but some of the review material is being pulled in as it's relevant to the main materials, and there's a lot of active learning. That's another component of this innovation that we've done for the pre-calculus class is active learning. We have boards on all the walls. We have collaborative furniture. We have embedded tutors who are faculty members. So really they're embedded faculty in the classroom to provide additional assistance during the active learning part of the class. There's additional workshops at our Success Center outside of class. So it really is a comprehensive kind of, wraparound service in addition to the structural changes that were made. At the same time, we developed a Calculus 1 with a 2-unit co-requisite as well. And that's really the focus of this webinar, is we're going to talk about the pre-calculus, this innovative prep for calculus course with support, and the Calc 1 with support, and how they, we are very intentionally scheduling them in a way so that students can transition from one in one semester to another in the next semester with faculty, either the same faculty member in some cases, or faculty that are very aligned in their approach to teaching and learning in the classroom. So that's the basics of what we're doing structurally. And today you're going to hear from several students who have a wide variety of experience in these support classes. So you may notice this is a slightly non-traditional webinar setting, because we have so many people and so many student voices who want to talk about their experience, that we decided to come into a conference room that has an owl camera. So you'll be able to see all of us, and the person who's talking will be highlighted. And so without further ado, I want to really turn it over to our students to start, and then you'll hear from our faculty, and then we'll have Q&A at the end. So I want to start with one student here, Miguel, who is taking the pre-calculus with support class for a second time. So, this is a common thing that we see, or I hear faculty with concerns about what if these students are not successful in these courses. And what we do with the program here is to provide the support, what we really call math GPS or STEM GPS. We're trying to do it across all of STEM, which is focusing on growth mindset, productive struggle in the classroom, and building a sense of belonging. That's the GPS. And that combination really helps to build confidence with the students. And you're going to hear that today. And also, that goes for students who don't necessarily pass the class the first time. They have the confidence to come back and take it a second time. And so we have one student, Miguel, who wants to speak to that. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Miguel Hernandez. I am a computer science major here at Chaffey College. And I am taking the pre-calculus 45 course for the second time. Before that, I took it maybe like a year and a half ago. And I took it the second time because I believe that, well, maybe in like just my opinion, but it's probably like the first time I understood math very like in a better understanding than I have previously. Because with the growth mindset, I understood that, coming from my weaknesses that, I put in a lot of hours thanks to our curricular support, with our counseling, with the tutoring services they offer here at JP. And I basically can see like a better understanding of, what I can do within this milestone, because to have an understanding, you need pre-calculus to go into calculus. So I wanted to challenge myself for the first time and take this class. Now, I wasn't successful the first time, which is true, but that the first attempt did not stop me from taking this class the second time, because this is not the only class that I took the second time, at least here in JP. I've taken a couple others, and from those other classes, I've been successful, at least in the second attempt, because I put in lots of hours. I have a better understanding of the material. And it's not just that, oh, I know the answers. It's more of just, I can do the material, not just by myself, but I can also help myself, but also help others to help understand the material that is offered within pre-calculus. So hopefully I can go into Calc 1 and begin my math journey for my major.
Yeah, great, thank you. And I think, having that that support in the classroom where you can build community and you can help other students based on the experiences you've had, and other students can help you. That's a big part of the success of what we're doing here. So now we're going to shift to some students who have taken a pre-calculus support last semester, and they are currently in Calc 1 with support. And so we have a few students here to speak to their specific experience with that. Let's start with David. So just go ahead and talk a little bit about what it means to thrive in this positive, active learning environment.
So when I first started, I honestly didn't take school seriously. And as I progressed throughout years and meeting different professors and different experiences, I decided I wanted to take things seriously, especially with more help being added into more of these classes. Because I took college algebra twice and I failed it both times. And now I've taken pre-calculus and I passed it on my first attempt with an A. And so maybe it's the support, maybe it's because I attended more than what I was supposed to, but they provide all of these things for you to take advantage of. And if you don't take advantage of it, then I guess it just depends by person whether they pass or put in that effort outside of those things. But my intention was never to really, I guess, get into math originally. I am a communications major, but as I've taken more classes, I'm currently in Calculus 1 with support. I realized I want to do more with that area, so I actually do. This is my last semester, so I actually will transfer into Cal Poly Pomona, and I wanna do a math minor in Cal Poly Pomona, and all because of all the support I was able to get and all of the effort I've been able to put into all these like classes, not just only math, but all my other classes. But yeah, it really was all taking advantage of all the support I've been able to get from these math classes that helped me get as far as I have so far.
Great, thank you. Let's go to Vince next, and maybe you could talk a little bit about your experience in the workshops that either precede or follow the main course.
Yeah, so I've attended most of the workshops, and in all honesty, it's helped me like keep up with the math programs and stuff. When I was in high school, unfortunately I had like a torn ACL, and I had to get like 3 surgeries. So my math grade was like went down and downhill. Like stuff I knew before, I just couldn't answer. Luckily for the workshops, it helped me like get back up to where I once was, get back to where I could say I was proud of. And like in high school, I was like satisfied for some reason with like B's, C's. But now that I'm in college, I'm getting A's, stuff like that. And the workshop has really helped me like practice skills that, in the sense like I needed more time in, such as factoring, driving, stuff like that.
Yeah, great, thank you. And just to make sure everybody understands, when we're talking about the workshops, these are workshops that are held either before or after the main course, and they're led by the embedded faculty who's actually in the classroom. So they get to know the students, and oftentimes they build that relationship, and then have the students just follow them after the class over to the workshop room, which is in one of our Success Center areas. So that's an important piece of all these wraparound services, to have these workshops available, especially when they're led by faculty who are also in the classroom. So let's go to, actually we'll go to Matt next. And if you could talk a little bit about the active learning environment in the classroom with support, and how that's helping you to be successful.
Right. So my name is Matt. I'm a biology major here at Chaffey, and I've failed math so many times. Like I actually like kind of gave up. So in high school, I failed pre-calc, went into Cal Poly Pomona, failed college algebra, came to Chaffey, tested into trig, and then between Cal Poly algebra and my first trig class was like 3 years. So I failed that first trig. Finally got another class maybe 2 or 3 years later, failed that too, and then I had to petition to take it the third time. Got added to the class, but forgot about it and got dropped because I didn't pay for it. So I was just like, you know what, I'm done. Like, I'll do everything else, and then at the end, I'll just figure out my math. So eventually, we got rid of those prerequisites, came straight into pre-calc. So I took that as like a refresher. And so typically, like all the math classes I've taken, it's you go into class, you sit there for like an hour and a half or whatever, and let the professor lecture, and then you go home and have like all this homework. And a lot of it was people would be like afraid to ask questions, and they didn't want everybody else to know that they were totally completely lost. So when you go home to do the work, you don't know what you're doing, and then you just fall behind. So with the active learning, you learn everything you need in the class, and you usually don't leave the class until you know everything, because either you have the professor helping you have the embedded tutor helping you have the other students helping you, and you separate into groups. And then so even if you do understand, it helps you reinforce it, because you're over here helping the people who don't know what they're doing. So you're helping yourself while helping everybody else. And so being like in that active learning environment, it really helps you understand. That way you can actually go home and practice, rather than look at the problems and be like, I don't remember what I'm doing, and then have to go back into class and just fall behind.
All right, well, thank you. And as to kind of follow up on that, Guga, if you could talk about the significance of building friendships and really your support network amongst students to help you be successful in this active learning environment.
Honestly, if I'm gonna be really honest, in the past, I feel like I've had a learning environment in math where you really don't have that collaboration with anybody. You're kind of just doing your own thing. And I will be honest, it sucks. So to be able to have that collaboration with all the other, students within the class is actually really amazing, because not only do you get to meet these fun people, you also get to kind of like help each other learn something and, go through these challenges together, And I feel like I really, really enjoy that. Like I enjoy the engaging, um, surroundings of not just the professors, but the students themselves too, because I feel like everyone there is willing to learn and they want to, so they, help one another.
Yeah, great, thank you. And we'll now move over to Nia, is that her first name? Thank you. And so if you could talk a little bit about what inspired you to take the pre-calc with support class and how that experience has helped you transition into calculus with support.
It's kind of like a mix of what Matt and Goob said. It's just because it's more interactive, and then you also get that extra help from the embedded tutors like Donna, and then you can go to it before class or after class, and it's just like the reason I chose it was because it's just really helpful to have like that extra support, so then you know what you're doing, and also it's like it really is interacting with your classmates too. Like that's another thing. It's like if you don't understand something, you're not alone. Like you can go to the person next to you and be like, we're both confused. Like let's ask Professor Newell or let's ask Donna, and it's kind of like it's more. No, you too. I didn't mean to say it like that. But, ask everybody that knows what they're doing, basically. But it's inviting is what's nice about it, because it's like it's not. You don't have to go home and not know what you're doing. You take the notes in class, you work on it with someone else, and it's like okay, even if we don't fully get it, we still have a better understanding than we did before, and that's why I chose it.
All right, thank you. And we're gonna finish up with our student panel with Andrew. And Andrew has a little bit of a different story.
Yeah.
Where it's more about just Calc 1, Calc 2, and Calc 3, if you could talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do have a little bit of a different story in the sense that all throughout my math experience, I've always been very good at it. All throughout high school, IM1 through IM3, pre-calculus, I've always been very comfortable around the mathematics. I took Introduction to Algebra with Miguel, actually, my first semester here at Chaffey. And that was a relatively, for me, somebody who spent my entire life emphasizing mathematics with a family of engineers, going into a class like plane trigonometry and pre-calculus, I took them both online and fast track in my second semester here at Chaffey. I got an A in both classes. And then I took Calculus 1 online with Yegge, assuming that I would have the same approach as I did throughout my entire life. But that was probably one of the rudest awakenings I've ever experienced in my entire life. It literally felt like I got kicked in the face, because calculus is a completely different way of approaching mathematics. You can't approach it with the intuition that you previously established in prior classes. You do have these techniques that you need to, that prior classes reinforce. So I took it online with Yegge and I failed. I completely bombed Calculus 1, and he told me that he's teaching Calculus 1 again next semester with a support class. That's where I met Donna and our SI leader, Chris. Now, in this class, the collaboration and the extra hour to reinforce the prior trig and algebra concepts was critical for me to like not only understand but internalize the material of Calc 1. Moving on to Calc 2, that was a really, really big shift in pace, where I went from 3-4 hours in the classroom every Tuesday, Thursday, with incentives to go to the Success Center and the workshops, to a class where it's at 8 a.m., and it's 2 hours long on Mondays and Wednesdays. That was a very difficult transition for me, because I went from collaboration, talking to people on the board, and brainstorming through problems, to here's the lecture, here's the assignment, it's due on the day of the exam, which my Calc 2 professor was a phenomenal professor. He had a very, very manageable workload, and he was passionate about the material he was teaching. It just so happened that the shift between the two was very difficult for me. especially because there was no extent, like, for example, I didn't understand how to complete a square until integration using partial fractions. That's when I learned a basic algebra concept such as completing the square. Now I'm shifting on to Calc 3, where we're back on the chalkboards, we're back to collaborating, we're back to talking to people. And I feel like my understanding of Calc 3 is much more internalized than it was in Calc 2. So just overall, having that collaboration and learning other people's learning styles is critical as well. For me, when I'm learning, I like to write on the board and erase and write and erase until it works, until it clicks. A lot of the people that I was working with, their learning style was write until I know, sit back, think about it, and then continue to work after they've reached that step. So learning other people's learning styles, engaging with classmates, and collaborating through problems has really helped internalize the material that I've been exposed through Calc 1 and Calc 3. So yeah, that was my experience kind of shifting through the calculus courses.
I'd like to state a question to the students from somebody here. It says, do you think you were more successful because you were in class for 6 hours per week? Or do you think you would have been just as successful had you been in class for a shorter amount of time, like 4 hours per week? If anybody wants to speak to that.
Can I speak to that? So I think, you know, I can only speak to, I guess, sporting terminology because I was in football in high school and I was football, wrestling, and track. I think the more reps you get, the better you'll be, the more you'll understand something. You know, when you repeat something over and over and over again in different structures and different formats, in different communities especially, you get to bounce ideas off of each other in a way that is significantly more beneficial than, you know, 2 hours lecture, then go watch a, you know, organic chem tutor on YouTube. You know what I mean? So when you have that collaboration and that extra time, you do a lot better.
Anybody else do it?
Can I add on to that?
Yes.
Like, having it be longer is really helpful, so then you don't have to go home and watch a YouTube video, you know, you get all of that while you're at the lecture. So I would say that the 6 hours is more helpful than, you know, a 4-hour one.
Yeah, my first trig class here was an hour and a half, and that was really the only time for lecture. With the whole 3-hour session, you have time to lecture what the material is, practice what the material is, and then if you have issues with something from like algebra, like factoring, you can go back and get practice on that, which then you would use to like practice finding limits or whatever you're working on.
Questions for students at this point?
Not that I have.
Well, we will have an opportunity for Q&A at the end of this webinar, and a lot of the students are going to be able to stay. So if you have any additional questions for the students, you know, please put them in the chat, and we'll get back to them at that time, or in the Q&A, I should say. So now we're going to move over to hear from our faculty who are teaching these courses. And so we'll start with Professor Benny Neal, who is teaching pre-calculus with support.
Yeah, hi, I am Benny Neal. I first just want to say how proud I am of all these students. I've had all but one, and a lot of them went from my pre-calc class to Professor Yegge's class, and I feel like a proud mama bear over here, like just seeing how well they're thriving. But I just want to speak a little bit to how our pre-calculus course has been restructured and redesigned, and how we're trying to change the learning environment in the classroom for our students. So historically at Chaffey, we had way more content in our pre-calculus core than that didn't really make it very feasible for our students to go deeper understanding with less topics. It was just way too many topics that I feel many faculty who taught at Chaffey, the feedback was I'm teaching a lot of content at a very shallow level of understanding. So one thing that our department did is over the last couple of years, we looked to align our curriculum to the CID. So now we are teaching what's required of the CID and making sure we're spending time with those topics to teach it at a level that is going to really sink in with the students, that hopefully, you know, they're not just learning how to do it, what are the mechanics of the problem, but let's have a graphical understanding of these problems. Let's understand, and I kind of would joke and break out, like, I want you to know how to solve this problem graphically and try to explain why are we doing the steps we're doing with the algebra. Like, let's use the graph to try to explain what we're doing. And and hoping that as they transfer on to the next classes, that those are things they can kind of keep asking themselves. So we did narrow the content down. Again, it does align with the current CID, with pre-calc CID. And then just kind of like has been talked about in a few spaces is just the collaboration. All of us faculty who are teaching the concurrent support courses, so the 4+2, we are meeting pretty much 2 times a month for a couple hours, the faculty, to talk about best practices. So we have this community of practice. So what are some best teaching practices? How can we get our students involved in active learning? What's a unique way of teaching maybe this particular topic? But I just want to kind of give an idea of what our classrooms look like. So we have this really amazing collaborative furniture. It's called koi furniture, kind of is in the shape of this like goldfish, but it's black and red. But it kind of looks like a little kid goldfish. And so you can link them together. They can be individual, groups of 2, 3, 4, 5. It's not really like, I was actually meeting with a faculty member at Cal Poly the other day, and she said, oh, we have these hexagonal desks and you get 3s and 6s, that's it. And so the koi furniture is great because you can change the configuration of the room, have them sit in groups of 3s, 4s. At one time we were 6s, one time we had an 8, so you just kind of get all over the place in your class. So imagine walking in where the students walk in and they're automatically placed in groups. So there's already the sense of I'm working, and there's thanks to Mike, we now have boards, whether they're whiteboards or chalkboards, on all the walls. And so there's this expectation, right, that we want our students to be up and working. And that takes time to let students have this productive struggle with the material. It does take longer. So that extra 2 hours is crucial, not just to allow the students to have space to try to figure it out. But it's also, I think, like less intimidating, right? For the I'm speaking for you, right? But I'll let them speak for themselves. But you know, you make a mistake, it's on a board, you erase it, you're not committing to anything, right? And then take that work, take your photo, transfer it to your paper in class. So all of this, just imagine in a lot of these classrooms, we want our students up at the board. They're not just going to be sitting all the time. And then different faculty have these different activities that they do. So whether it's like working problems around the room, we have these like card searches. I just did a do one, check one type activity the other day. They're just different kind of teaching strategies. We did a start of the jigsaw in class today. So it gives you the time for the faculty member to not just lecture at the students. And then the other great thing is that, you know, we could be across the room and I can hear these good conversations, like they're good. I don't need to teach this right now, the students have it. But I can see the student across the room is kind of detouring and no one's currently helping them. Let me run over and kind of right away. And then it's also just interesting. You can see what prereq material might be missing when the students are at the boards to say, okay, I'm going to stop the class for a moment. Let's just kind of like, you know, I'm solving a quadratic and, oh, we need some help on how to simplify a radical that is not, you're not taking the square root of a perfect square. Like, how can we simplify that? So let's pause, let's refresh, now keep going. And so I just want to emphasize too, the shift in the culture at Chaffey has been changing and other STEM departments are starting to notice. I was just in a meeting with one of the coordinators last week, I believe, for chemistry, and she was making a comment as this is the first time she's ever seen her chem students on their own creating study groups. And a lot of the students that are in our pre-calc with support and calculus with support classes are these same students in chem, in physics, in bio. And some of the other coordinators are saying, I'm seeing that too, we've never seen it. I said, well, that's coming, you know, from these math classes. We never really, at least for myself personally, I'm looking at Doug. I think in the last couple of years since we've started this, students on the first day, at least I know on my first day, they've interacted with almost everyone. I have these little sorting cards, right? So by the end of the day, you're in a different group of 3s, 6s, 4s, and it's all the different people. And so on the end of the first day, you've talked to more than half the class. And I'm looking at you too, like, hey, you've already linked up, you found your person. And now it's like, you know, we have these kind of jokes, you get to know people, they're not just students that I lecture at and leave. So I just, the culture in the classroom is so collaborative. And again, when I say like, oh, I'm so proud, like it's not just the students that, oh, they passed and gone. And I love that they come back and they visit and you can just see how successful they are in their next class. And again, the perseverance of students that say, I didn't pass it the first time, but I'm not giving up. And I want to just say, like, my current pre-calc class, I think I have 7 or 8 repeating students from last semester, the semester before, and the semester before. And for different reasons, they weren't able to pass the first time. But that growth mindset, sense of belonging, all those things are just like foundational to what's going on in our classes. So I'm kind of detouring a little bit. I'm just so proud of them. So, I know we had talked, you had mentioned just kind of assessments too. So every faculty member has the prerogative for how they do assessments, but there's also kind of the idea of, you know, you get this informal assessment in class. How we're restructuring, that can change. Some faculty might still be using very paper pencil, kind of more traditional tests, but I know I'm using like a platform, my open math platform in my classes where all of my students are testing at the same time, but they all have different versions, right? So there's also, for my assessments, a group component that's handwritten and I'm grading all that work. They work in groups to talk about more of that deeper level kind of graphical understanding of things we've done on the board that maybe my open math doesn't assess. But then they all have different versions of my open math and I go home and grade that work too. So you kind of get to see in different settings, just really allowing the students to show what they're understanding in a variety of ways, informally, formally, and you can kind of be creative with that extra time to do those things.
So my name is Yegge and I teach the Calculus 1 with support with all of these wonderful students. I've taught all but one of them as well. And I want to first of all just speak to David, who spoke earlier. You know, he took, because we're actually, and this is a little bit, you know, off topic, but we're also teaching a quantitative reasoning course, generally for non-STEM majors that are not taking that pathway. David first showed up in my Math 45 course. Had a slow start. I think he started to, you know, use some of those, you know, not doing the work, not coming to class too often, but within a few weeks, I think they started to really see the value in working together with the people that are in the class, the value of coming to class, people that were in the class that are texting him and saying, hey, where are you? Recognizing that he's not there. And so he took that, you know, being a communications major, he took that quantitative reasoning course. And this is just one anecdote, but there's a second person that also is in Professor Neal's course as well that was in that same class. Who appreciated that content, appreciated the mathematics, appreciated the support, and decided to register for pre-calculus, which he didn't need to do. He's a communications major. But I feel like he saw the value in that, and he didn't speak to that, but I felt that was beautiful, and I wanted to share that. And now, sure enough, he's in Calculus 1. And the other student that came from there was unsuccessful in Ms. Neal's pre-calculus course last semester. But he's right back in there again, stayed in through the entire semester, which I think is some other value in taking these courses, so that even though you may not be successful, if you stay in, you're learning something, right? And so he stayed in there, and he didn't pass by a very narrow margin, but he's in there again this semester, and I feel like he's doing, I think you said he's doing really well.
I would say practically every single student that this is the second time they've taken the class is doing dramatically better. And I've had multiple students be like, hey, I did so much better this time. And I'm like, yeah, you're doing great. And they're, in a lot of cases, the ones that, like you were saying, like you're helping the other students. And some of the first time students were like, well, I'm like, no, don't let this make you feel inferior. Like this is, I hope it's creating that sense of mistakes are okay. You ask questions. Actually, mistakes are encouraged because that's when our brains grow the most, right? So no, the students that are repeating the second time are doing great. And I know, Donna, you're going to be addressing this or talking a little bit later, but Donna was my embedded tutor. She's not my embedded tutor this semester, but she's been my embedded tutor for multiple linked pre-calculus support classes. And we were kind of discussing, like, I don't know what to tell these students now that so many of our prereqs are removed. Like, what we used to say, like, well, you're not doing great in pre-calc. Why don't you go back and touch up on algebra? Oh, you know, and it's like, well, how far can we push these students back to try to get the prereq satisfied? And I know that there's some maybe different opinions, and there's a concern of, well, what happens when students come with gaps or holes, right? Well, maybe instead of having them take like the 4 classes that lead up to it, can we use other resources like the Success Center and these outside supports to try to fill those holes in while they're learning the transferable material? So even if we kind of see in the beginning a student isn't going to be successful, kind of what we were saying, like, all right, Donna and I, this is going to be our messaging in the class to students is, and I would write up all the prereqs we used to have, like you used to have to take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different classes. Now, what if you failed one of them? Okay, well, what if you didn't, you know, you had a medical emergency, you couldn't finish for whatever reason? Well, you've already been 3 or 4 years at Chaffey. And so maybe we can get our students out and just change the messaging to, instead of withdrawing because you don't think you're going to pass, stay in the class. And I feel like you've kind of all heard me say the messaging, right? Like, even if you're not successful this time, master the first third of this class. Be a pro, so when you come in the second time, the first third is a breeze for you and you already know what to expect. And so you're using the same class, pre-calc or calc, you've taken it twice, but this is your prereq and you're getting that extra help. And I feel like the students that we've, at least that have kind of come through my classes have said that that's been helpful. Like, I didn't really fail, I'm just taking that extra time to learn, and I'm filling in those gaps along the way. Donna, I know when it gets to you, I was wondering if you'd be able to talk about your, your prereqs and your support materials too, yeah.
So, yeah, so I will, it was a little muffled, I guess, with the owl camera, and it didn't quite pick up, the answers that was given about the, 6 hours per week versus 4 hours per week. And, I think all three students that responded said that the 6 hours definitely helped because not only did it give the opportunity for instance, a regular hour and a half session, for instance, for a regular calculus class, maybe you have that time to lecture and that's about it. But now you have that 3 hours, 3.5 hours for my class, just because it's a 14-week course, to be able to give a mini lecture, but still get the opportunity to go up onto the board, to collaborate, to fill in any gaps in your algebra and your trigonometry. We had a 2-hour session last week or a couple weeks ago on trigonometry and the unit circle and identities and so on, which showed today when we were doing some questions in class, and I gave a trigonometric equation, and the students had no issue with it because they learned their unit circle. Nice job, guys. And so yes, I'm just echoing what the students said, that yes, they did feel that the 6 hours was definitely worthwhile. There's not a whole lot that I can say that Professor Neal didn't say as well, but I just really want to speak to the fact that teaching these support courses has really changed the way I am as a professor as well. I've over the last, 10 years, I've really tried to start getting away from coming in and lecturing at my students for 2 hours, because I know everything and I'm an awesome lecturer and I can share, all of this info with you, but come to realize that it just doesn't really work well, as I hear from a lot of the students that I have, that really need that reinforcement in class to be able to attempt problems, to make mistakes, to be able to get those mistakes corrected immediately while they're at the boards, while they're talking to their peers. And there's really just something beautiful that is that transpires when the students have built this community within the classroom, which of course we instructors facilitate that at the very beginning. I mean, I do the same exact activity every semester with every class. And the first day, it's people bingo, where they're required to get up and move around and talk to people and find out information about them. And ultimately by the end of that, and sometimes I just let it go for 30, 40 minutes sometimes, because I feel like by the time they're done, they sit down, they've talked to virtually every person in that class. And now when they come in the next day, I walk into class or I walk up and they're waiting outside, and there's already conversations. It's not as if people are all on their phones or just in their own little silos. Like, that community has been built to where now they have no issue talking to another person. And now I could just walk around the room and say, you're in group 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, give them their groups, and they go up to the boards with somebody that they have never worked with before, and the conversation begins immediately. And I just think that that's really beautiful, and I get an opportunity to meet my students on a deeper level. And I know that a lot of what we're saying seems like very touchy-feely, and it's like all but no, I think that this is really truly why the students are more successful in this class. It of course it has to do with them learning the content, learning about finding derivatives, learning about applying derivatives. Of course it means all of that. But I think that the reason why that happens, a lot easier now, is because of the fact that they have built community and there's collaboration. And you've heard multiple students here say how beneficial it is to be able to collaborate. And I think about as a teacher, how often you may have given group work, and you say, okay, get into your groups of 4 and work on this problem at your tables. I, as an instructor, especially being in my late 40s here, my eyesight is really going bad. And so, when I'm walking around and I'm trying to look at their papers, like Matt here, who writes like an ant is reading it. I can't read it. I can't see it. I can't see whether or not he's getting it right. And now I can see him, but I don't know what's happening on the other side because they're just on their paper. But if everybody is up at the boards, I can literally just stand in the middle of the room. I can look around at every single group. I could see that this group is struggling. These two groups over here are killing it. This group that's right next to them is conversing with the people that they don't know what they're doing, right? With the people that don't know what they're doing, and they're helping each other so that frees me up to be able to go over to the students that really need it, put them back on track. And then I can see that nobody knows how to convert from a fractional exponent into a radical. So everybody go ahead and pause for a second. And that gives me an opportunity to now fill in those gaps, to fill in the algebra that they need at that time, right? Because there is a lot of resistance, and I realize that, and I'm not going to downplay the fact that in the state there is a lot of resistance of eliminating the pre-transfer level math courses, the beginning algebra, intermediate, college algebra, trade, and so on. I get it, but at the same time, my experience with these support courses is that it's working. It's working by retention. It's working with throughput rates at our college. Students are passing through Calculus 1 in less semesters than ever before. I presented with Wangler a couple of times here about how successful our courses are, and I'm not just touting up the fact that this is Chaffey. This is happening at multiple colleges as well. And so we're here today. Obviously, the whole point of why we're here is to share why this model has worked and is working for a lot of students, and giving you some ideas about how to make improvements, I guess, within your own however you're choosing to create your own support courses at your college. But hands down, the main reason why this works is because of the active learning components that are in the class. It's not because we're teaching differently. It's not because of the content that we're teaching within our support courses. It's about the fact that the students are allowed to make mistakes. They see where their mistakes are before going home and having to work through the problem sets on their own for the first time. And community means everything. I mean, these students went straight from Miss Neal's class right into my class, and these aren't the only students. I mean, this is what 6 students, 5 students. There's Michael. There's Josh. There's a few others, right? I mean, there's numerous students that are seeing the value in this. So yeah, they could just take a regular, standard Calculus 1 course, but they choose not to because they see the value in this environment. And I'm really proud of these guys too. I mean, it's awesome. I knew all of my students the second day of class, right? Names and personalities, and I can see hearing little conversations or jokes that they make, and it makes the day go by so much faster too. I mean, it seems like 3.5 hour class. That's a long class, but
it actually goes really fast. It's kind of sad.
Yeah, I know.
I was gonna say that too. Like, I think from teaching a class, people go, "Oh my goodness, 3.5 hours of lecture." I was like, no, there's not 3.5 hours of lecture. And I've been surprised at how many students have said, "Wow, this class is almost over, and it's way longer than my other class." So Google I don't want to speak for students, but I heard you just say it goes by faster.
For me, I really do enjoy coming to these classes because, like, as Mr. Yegge said, the community within it, I really, really enjoy it. Like, I really enjoy being able to engage with all the other students and smile and laugh and enjoy doing something I love doing. So, like, with the amount of time that we have, I'm actually kind of surprised it's the whole, 3 hours or so, because it doesn't feel that way. It feels like a good hour and that's it. And I kind of wish it would sometimes last longer just because I really enjoy the community, but
And calculus is really awesome.
Yeah. Great. We want to take a couple minutes to hear from Donna in her role as embedded support faculty and workshop leader, and then we'll open it up for Q&A.
So Mike, if you would stop me, I can talk for half an hour about my experience, but I gotta make sure I don't go too long here. So I want to start off telling you about my background, and because that's going to play a role in you understanding just why I'm looking at these classes the way I am. So I was a full-time tenured professor for 15 years in math, and I left to become a full-time mom. And I came back and I started teaching part-time again, and now here I'm nearing my retirement, and I thought I'd, take on this role as an embedded tutor. And at first I thought I'm really gonna miss the teaching, and I do, being the head of the classroom. But this role as an embedded tutor has been my favorite, without a doubt. And now I'm thinking, I don't know if I want to retire. This is just fantastic. And I'll address why that makes a difference as I go through the few comments I want to make. First of all, my role, against, if you haven't caught it thus far, first of all, in the classroom, I walk into the classroom for the last hour, both times the class meets, and I walk around the room and all the boards, and I help students with the questions that they're working on. And I also hold the workshops for 1 hour before each class or after the class. And during those workshops, I can answer questions like, what's the square root of 4? Because maybe they don't want to ask that in class, right? Or I can hold many lectures on topics that the students need a little reinforcement on. Students often work on homework, and I can help answer their homework questions. And another role I have is, this is now my 4th semester as a support staff. And I noticed that students perhaps need a little more time with prerequisite skills. Instructors go over prerequisite material to varying degrees in all the different classes I've been an embedded tutor in. So I wanted to create a Canvas course that talked about key prerequisite skills that you need to be successful in pre-calculus or calculus. So I gathered resources from where I used to work and created some of my own, where you can review a topic on Canvas. There's a short review of the topic, and then you can do some practice problems. For example, looking at piecewise functions, often I found to be a struggle for students in pre-calculus, so there's a Canvas module with a quick review of that topic. Next, I just probably have a couple minutes, right, Mike? I got stuff.
Yep.
Okay, let me just hit the key things. So currently right now, I am an embedded tutor in 2 classes where there's active learning, where students are up at the board when I'm in there, they're working, they're talking. And then there's 1 class where it's a support class, but the active learning consists of working for 1 hour on a 7-page worksheet. And they're in groups with the special desks, but they don't go up at the board. And when they're working on the worksheets, I go around and help them, and students talk to each other from time to time. So again, the level of activity varies greatly in these support classes, but by far, the most success that I've seen are in the classes where there's a high level of activity. Not only is there an incredible sense of community where the students are helping each other, but just what they're learning, what they're talking about is at a whole new level. Because students are using their language. If I try to explain something or Nia tries to explain something, mine is a little too formal sometimes, right? Students talk to students in a way that students really understand. So that is just phenomenal to see them have that opportunity to talk in those groups. One last thing I'm going to add, in the class where their activity is just doing a worksheet and they talk to each other from time to time, there's 1 group of women that hardly ever speak, but it seems like they're really understanding it. So I asked them the other day, so were you in calculus before? I mean, you seem to be getting it. And the one woman said, well, we get to collaborate. That's really happy. I'm thinking, this is collaboration. I think you said about 10 words in the last hour to your classmate. Let me tell you about another section that might be available if you really like that collaboration idea, right? So it is such a joy to be part of all of this. There's such community. When I saw students from Benny's class in pre-calc were in Doug's class for calculus semester, I'm like, hey, everybody, I just want to hug everybody. Get out, there's Mallory here. Okay, stop me. I keep going.
Okay.
Okay.
So Sorry,
Thank you.
Mike, go ahead.
So we're gonna.
I was just gonna, you know, I know
questions?
we only have a few minutes left and there's a few questions that are popping up here that maybe are, I'm trying to answer what I can, but, maybe there's some that would be, better for, so Benny, I'll just, you know, read this one and you can speak to this briefly. Are you concerned that your innovative prep for calc course will not be validated? That is, do you feel confident you'll continue to be able to offer that course during and after fall 2027?
I mean, I would absolutely hope so. I guess we'll see what, data turns up, because, right, that's part of your data needs to support that you're making a difference with these classes. What I will say is the extra hour allows just as much collaboration as possible, but even if we are told that this can't happen, like you were saying, Doug, I feel like the way we are teaching, even in a traditional 2-hour course, I mean, I might have to be a little more creative with it or intersperse a little lecture, but I don't think I could go back to the 2 hours of just pure lecture the whole time. And you can tell, like, even if it's like, it's only 10 minutes, y'all, let's get through this problem. And it's like, oh, their eyes are glazing over. I will say the one thing that even if it says, hey, something changes and we go back to, you have to start in calc and all this work went into pre-calc. I don't want to say it's for naught, because that's going to carry over to whatever class it is that we're teaching, calc or whatever. But even if, for faculty maybe that are like, I don't even know where to start, like just even doing lecture on the boards and just having the students, like, rather than me lecturing at you, everyone stand up when we're doing this together. Like, that's like putting a toe in the water, right? Just let's do this problem on the boards together could be helpful. So I don't know if I can answer that because I don't know what's going to happen in the future. But I don't see myself wanting to go back to just lecturing at students for 2 hours. Still trying to incorporate as much active learning, yeah, even if the last hour is not there. But I mean, really the support is so helpful to allow us to fill in those prerequisite maybe gaps that might not be there.
And even in courses that don't have a support course linked to it, like Andrew was talking about, I teach him in Calculus 3. We don't have a support course for Calculus 3, but I still run it in an active learning way. I mean, I lecture generally for a short period. I flip my classroom to where they're expected to watch videos through PlayPosit every day. Whether or not they do that coming into class, that's on them, but they're expected to, right? So that, the goal is that when we come in, we can hit the ground running. And so whether there's a support course or not, I'm still doing active learning, but, having that extra hour attached to a Calculus 1 course that I've taught for 20 years now. And I don't know, yeah, I look so young, but, having taught it for so long, there's no way that I could really teach at that same level and teach the students what they need to know for algebra and trig with the amount of time that we have in a 4-hour Calculus 1 class. There just wouldn't be enough time. So I'm extremely grateful that we have this support time to be able to work through that when needed. And just to mention as well, Mike mentioned at the very beginning that the support content, even though the support class is 1 hour out of the 3-hour class, that doesn't mean that during that time, we're only doing the support content. The support content is just completely folded in everywhere. So there may be some days where we're just doing the calculus, and there might be other days where we're only doing support content. It just depends on what's necessary at that time. But anyhow, I want to read through these Q&As real quick. This is a good one that I'm interested in as well. Does having to repeat the course with the added support still allow the students on financial aid to get paid for retaking the course? I know the idea of staying in the course versus dropping means you are learning something, but I thought financial aid will not pay for repeated courses.
It's my understanding they will pay for a second repeat and a third under certain circumstances. So it's really no different than any other course at the college. So, the expectations, I mean, there are limits, and I don't know enough about financial aid to know what those limits are, but there are a certain number of course repeats that are allowable regardless of the course.
There was another question. Have you compared success rates for the support sections versus standard sections? I don't believe that we've compared those success rates yet, but we don't have, we've got, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, we have 1 year's worth of data, and the success rates are about the same. It's within margin of error between those with support and those that don't have a support component, which is, that's a sign that I see it as a sign of success, that we don't have a gap between the two. And ultimately, we are following students beyond Calc 1 as well, and we have some preliminary data with a very low N showing that students who did take Calc 1 with support were equally as successful in Calc 2 as those who took the regular Calc 1 without support class. So things are looking really good for our STEM majors.
And that's good, but I'd also like to add that students within certain GPA bands are recommended to take the support course, highly recommended depending on where they are. And there's some students that, you know, are above a certain level of their GPA where they can just register for that course, the regular Calc course. So I think that's a success that the students who were ill prepared for Calculus 1 in the first place and were then recommended to take the support course are passing at the same rates as those students who were supposedly ready for their regular Calc course. I mean, I think that speaks volumes.
And I don't think we've parsed out the data of online courses compared to in person, if I'm not
Right.
mistaken. So that also is something we want to compare over time, just in person with support, in person without support, because online's a different.
Sorry, I'll default back to Mallory here because I think that this webinar is going to automatically cut off at 4, and we have a few seconds left. So I appreciate we all appreciate everybody for coming in. But thank you, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Yeah, just a huge thank you to you all. Thank you for rapid fire answering all the questions. Thank you for all the students for being here and just for sharing all of your experience. And thanks for everyone that's in attendance. We will be recording and posting this webinar on the Equitable Placement and Completion website and on the Multiple Measures Assessment Project website for the RP group. So just a big thank you to everyone.